Hello,
Hi,
I'm Derek,
I'm James
and we're going to talk.
about MBTI, and this is the 2 of 16 podcast. I prepared a little something today. This is something I've been thinking about recently, and I wanted to share with you. I also wanted to share with Derek and see what he had to think about it. So let's get started. The title, as the video is going to say, or something else, is Identity in Motion. Identity in Motion, and it's about growth and letting go. And so I thought I've been reflecting upon a lot in my life, and actually especially recently, is the idea that growth is actually not just growth, but it is about letting go and picking up new things. In other words, this is something I think about a lot. It's about death, letting something in your current life die, and then picking up a new thing, picking up a new identity, picking up a new way of thinking, picking up a new action. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about exactly what identity is, because I believe it is something that's alive and constantly changing. And I'd also like to connect it to MBTI, because what I also realized is there is something MBTI has to say about this. And it's something I'd also like to discuss with Derek with his INTJ self, and see if there are any connections. So, getting back into it, what I've thought about with identity. The reason why I've thought about this a lot recently is this idea that I think I am something, and I would try new things, and I would say something like, "Oh, that's not me. That's what am I doing? That's totally weird." But what I have come to realize about identity itself is it is nothing static. That's what I think. I think it evolves over time, and a lot of times the hardest changes we have to make, the things that we realize we have to make if we want to move in the direction we want to go, is letting a part of us die, a small death. And I'd like to ask Derek here whether you have any thoughts about identity, something that you thought you did, something that you thought you were, and if you have any thoughts about identity in general.
Identity to me is, I'm Derek. I've always been Derek. I go through changes like anyone else. But I'd say anything, like, I don't reflect on who I am. I don't really think about that so much. So for me, I don't really, I'm at a loss for words, to be honest with you, up till now. I mean, you mentioned that a part of you ceases to exist and then maybe new things start. Again, I don't really look at it that way. For me, it's like I'm usually focused on something objectively, and so I'm looking at what's ahead of me usually. I'm not really reflecting on, or I'm not really honing in on internal things more than just my thoughts, but my thoughts are exactly that. They're not of this world, so, again, the word identity just for me is just whatever other people see, I guess. I don't know, frankly. I've never thought to ask anyone. I don't really want to ask anyone. So I don't know what kind of answer you're looking for, but that's it's just not something I think about, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But maybe it's something that you'll say something here soon that's gonna make me think differently. I hope.
Yeah, sure. I also, when I hear you say that, and I reflect on INTJ, it sounds about right. I wonder if you would say that it's not so much identity as where you're going, and where you're going is the most important thing, and you'll change anything to make where you're going make sense, to make it work.
Yeah, actually, you used a good word there. Change. If you want, if we want to use a metaphor, it's like, yeah, well, not a metaphor, but like, you know, INTJs and myself, I go through these. I could even use a word metamorphosis or metamorphoses over time, but that's usually just to adapt. So it's either changing part of the plan and then executing it differently, or yeah, typically when it's execution time, there's not much room for change because that's already the direction we're going. But when you get from one point to another one, changes can be made at each step in the plan. So those are what I consider to be changes. But again, that's not identity. That's just building on top of what you mentioned. So
Yep.
yeah.
Interesting. So perhaps one thing we can see here, perhaps it is. I am speaking from my SI when I say identity, and as Derek has SI as very last, it's not really something he thinks about, perhaps. We will continue exploring, though. Let's first go into the MBTI about this topic, and what I've come to realize about when I say identity, what I'm actually saying is this idea of cognitive loops. They talk about in MBTI, and for me as an INTP, it is TISI, and the way that looks is I TI a theory. I make sense of the world. And this was very much how I lived my life as a child. I TI the world and I make some conclusion about it. And then if it's not that conclusion, then I think it's wrong and I'm not going to go there. And that made me feel really smart as a kid. However, the older I got, the less I knew. And the more I had to do stuff that I didn't have any theory about. And for a long time, well, not for a long time, but for around high school to college, that was a moment when I started having to do a lot of things that I had no thoughts about, no theories about, and I got very scared because I was very much in TISI, and that's where I wanted to be. So that's how that loop looks like to me. One classic example, actually, this is something I still deal with right now. One example is yesterday. I'm quite new to learning Korean, speaking Korean, and I thought to myself, okay, I need to make an appointment. I'm going to call in Korean. First time I'm going to do it, I immediately wanted to know exactly what I was going to say and have it make complete sense. But after about 20 minutes of this, I realized, no matter how much I study this, it's not going to make complete sense until I just try and do it. And so I just made the call. I just went in. And I'm going to talk about how I did that made it possible. But that's my TISI saying, I'm going to figure out first before I can do anything. Now for Derek over here, Derek has an NIFI loop, which is about an idealized internal vision becoming so clear and so significant that it limits your ability to act. And I'm wondering, Derek, if that makes any sense to you, if you ever remember that happening in your life.
I wouldn't describe it as a vivid vision that stops me from acting, but it is more of a, I don't know what the wording is. You fantasize something up, or you come up with something and you really want it to be true. You want it to exist in the real world. But there's something about, the internal part of it that, and that feels really good to think about that it could exist, but it's not actually something that's doable. I think that's what you're getting at. That is the only time I feel stuck. So the shift from NI to TE to execution phase of this idea doesn't happen. And so I guess it's technically a loop such that, I'll think about it and then I'll feel something about it and then I'll think about it and then I'll feel something about it. And I never seem to be able to perfect the plan. And I suppose that could be what you're talking about. Is that the right direction?
Yeah.
I suppose it's putting too much too much weight on the idea itself, and wanting so desperately for it to happen. Honestly, I think it's just self-doubt in a sense, like, oh, I don't think it's possible. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, not something so stupid as I really wish I were 200 centimeters tall, and then I try to come up with a plan to make myself 200 centimeters tall. But like, if I guess it could technically be something like that, it's just not plausible. That's definitely something I will get into a loop with.
Yeah. What I hear is that you have this vision, and the vision, like you almost have this feeling like it has to go the way the vision goes, and you look into the physical world and no plan in the real world will get you there, and so you keep on going back to the vision.
And actually saying that something has to happen is exactly right. Like, in order for a vision to be true, or to be real rather, certain things, you know, have to happen. And so yeah, I guess, like, I don't know, I suppose it would become like almost an obsession. But what I've done, and I don't know if this is coming up later or not, what I've done to sort of alleviate this is just I have to remind myself not to get stuck on any one idea, or I will just stop myself and say, hey, let's take a look here at what you got. So I guess that is me checking into reality, because checking back into the real world, so to speak, and then say, okay, what are we looking at? Is this plausible? If it's really not, why don't we either A, come up with a different version of this plan, or B, if plan A ends up looking a lot like the original plan, then move on to a different idea altogether. Distractions are useful too sometimes.
I see. Yeah, so you're getting a little into the next thing we were talking about, which is what is the way to get past this cognitive loop, getting stuck. And for an INTP, it is the second function, which is the extroverted hero, really, which is extroverted intuition, exploration. And generally, so the feeling of TISI is, I'm going to make sense of this. And the trap that INTPs can get into is, if I'm going to make sense of this, and eventually it's going to make so much sense that I'm going to know what to do. The issue is, if I've never experienced this before, if I've never done it before, then it just won't make enough sense. So that the way out is to simply say, I'm not going to be able to make sense of this. So let's just do it without thinking and see how it goes. And the feeling is very much like, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm never going to know. So let's just go completely open-minded and see how it goes. Here goes nothing.
I find that to be interesting. It's quite the opposite of myself, because I would probably never execute a plan that I don't feel confident in being able to complete. Like, the decision, like when I make a decision, it is absolute. So once I start working on it, it has to be completed. So for me, it's better to throw away said plan or to erase the plan. So in your case, you're saying just, go move forward with it. Whereas I'm saying, let's take a step back, or not step back, just pause, delete, and then try again.
Yeah. So, for me, I think what we see here is TI. Like, TI is not really a planning function; it's a figuring out function from data I've already gathered. And so, if someone wants me to plan, I very naturally just go back into figuring stuff out, and it's just the opposite direction of me doing anything. And so for me, gathering more data requires me to say, okay, I can't figure it out. Let's go and find out something else. So very much my action is letting go of thinking. So Derek, you brought up extroverted thinking, and how perhaps that is your way out of NIFI world. Would you like to share any more thoughts about that, if you have any?
I mean, that does sort of contradict what I just said, in a sense, but I mean, I'd have to think of specific examples, which is not something I really would do. It's like, once I accomplish something, I'm done, and I move on to the next thing. So, like I said, I would probably modify said plan and execute it I mean, but of course, the exit from the loop, yes, it's always going to be the extroverted thinking. It's just once I've decided on a plan. I mean, it's just what I can say with a high degree of certainty is that I will not start doing anything without having an idea first. I don't blindly do stuff. Yeah.
I see. And to go meta, very much this podcast. I wonder how much TE was in this podcast, but I very much know that a lot of where we ended up right now was NE. I told Derek I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to explore what that was all about, but I had no idea where it was going to go or anything. And I said, we'll just record one and then we'll see what ideas come after. We'll see. We'll record one and we'll see. And sure enough, we recorded the podcast, and like the night of, I went home and I just had a million ideas that I wrote out and I shared with Derek. So that was very much a evidence for me that that's how I work. The decisions, the understandings don't come before; they come after I do something just to try it out. The other thing I want to talk about is something I talk about with Derek a lot these days is that I cannot. The way the human brain works, perhaps, but definitely the way that my brain works, is I want to go a lot faster, but I cannot go faster than my brain. And actually, to go meta, this podcast has very much been a practice in that, where we would, for example, we would record an episode, and then I would have no idea what I wanted to do next. So, no idea, do nothing. The next day, I would have some idea, and then we would move into that. And that has very much been the way my life has been going recently, which is, what is on my mind to do, I'll do that. What are any explorations to do? I've been trying like Arduino. I've been trying many things, and just trying those. And my brain wants to do even more because it just feels like it's going somewhere, but I don't know what to do next. And so I do as much as I see the explorations to do, and then I just wait. And I think about it kind of like planting seeds and waiting for them to grow. That's very much how I've seen recent explorations. And I'm wondering, Derek, if you have anything that you've noticed these days in that kind of direction, where you do a certain amount and then you see that perhaps there's nothing else to do, and all there is left to do is wait.
I would say that that's never the case for me, actually. When I am doing something, I do it to completion, and then I move on to the next thing, and I'm actually looking for the next thing, always, actively. Whether it's productive or not, that's debatable, but for me, waiting is very painful. Not physically painful, but mentally painful. So you might think, well, okay, what do you mean by waiting? Because when I'm envisioning something, that's not me waiting. That's me working. Using my head is working. So what I mean by waiting is just mindless. Like if I'm having to focus, like use SE, let's say, on something I'm doing, and it's not TE and it's not working towards a goal, or I'm just wasting time, that I can't stand.
I see.
So I know that's not really on board with what you were talking about, but for me, there's no break time from this. In fact, that's why I guess INTJs are known for being insomniacs, not sleeping much, not caring much for themselves, because we're so out of touch with those things, because we keep ourselves busy at all times. Yeah,
and I recently saw a video by Alex Hermosi, which I consider an ENTJ, and he actually had a video exactly about this, where he said, Um, waiting, he redefined waiting so it made sense to him. Waiting is just finding other stuff to do in the meantime. And it sounds almost like that's what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
you don't wait, you look for other stuff to do instead.
Right, but I don't want it to be busy work. So that's where, this internal conflict will happen because, of course, like anyone, I will do unproductive things. Like, I'm an avid gamer. One would argue that gaming is good for some reason or another, but I mean, it's not when you have other things you could be doing. So there's certainly that thought process of, am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? Am I doing something that's furthering my goals in life? And I'd like to be doing that 24/7. So I guess you could say there's inner turmoil there, but that turbulence will typically occur when something's not going well or something's unbalanced in my life. I might be off topic again, but
No.
yeah, but it's like all systems go. Like the point being, at least for me, and I think for ENTJs as well. So I'll say we like to TE, and because the accomplishment we get at the end apparently is a dopamine releaser. You know what I mean? So the more tasks we complete in a day, the better we feel. Or certainly me. If I have a list of tasks to do, and if I only plan to get 3 done and I get 7 done, I still wish I did 10, but I still did my 3 plus 4 more. And that's how I'd like every day to be forever and ever. And I feel like, and I'd like to ask you, how do you feel about that? Would you even reflect on something like that? Oh, I did 20 things today, or does that thought not even cross your mind?
Doing things.
Okay,
doing things.
And of course I don't mean busy work. I'm not talking about just, I did stuff. I mean things that have a purpose. Whether it's chores, whether it's working on your experiments, or something that's furthering your life or your life goals.
I like when you say further your life, I don't equate that to I don't equate that to getting stuff done. I don't equate that to getting stuff done. Let me see if I can find what I'm trying to say here. I feel like that whole way of seeing my life is not the way I see my life. The way I see my life is through clarity. I feel like almost the purpose of my life is to understand more and more. And so if I understood something today, or if I made something work today, then I got something done. It has nothing to do with any lists or anything. Those lists are just things that I have to do, but they give me no feeling of progress or anything like that.
Right. The focus wasn't on the feeling of progress. I just meant specifically to you, how do you feel, and do you focus on accomplishments?
No.
Perfect.
I focus on experiments in progress, and if experiments in progress are expanding in my ability to understand them, then that's my progress.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There's a dog barking.
There's a dog barking. So to summarize, well, we were talking about identity, and what I was connecting identity to is this. There is a part of us that wants to stay the same, and I want to explore what we wanted to stay the same. And for me, it's TISI. It's what I understand about the world. I want that to stay the same, but that's not going to cover everything. And so I use any to break free from that and learn new things.
I think on my end, everything is automated, so I feel as I grow as a person, or as I have more experiences, or complete more projects, or however you want to look at it, make more accomplishments, or achieve more of my goals, the more that my system sort of updates. And this is not helping me sound less like a robot, but that's how I see it. And so these updates are what you're talking about. Whether it's being more balanced, using my inferior function SE without, some sort of overload, getting in and out of the NI, what was it? NIFI loop. The dog is barking and it's distracting me. These types of things are just stuff that happens, and then when I see a solution, it's the same as when I have a vision and execute a plan. It just gets done, and then I don't do it again. If obviously we all make mistakes sometimes more than once. I'm not claiming to be perfect once I've fixed it, but adjustments are made as I move along.
Mm-hmm.
Who's making them? I don't know.
Okay. So
they're not intentional.
They're not okay.
What I mean, do you get what I'm saying? I'm not sitting here going, okay, I'm doing these things wrong or right or whatever, and let's analyze that and let's figure out a way to change that or do something differently or let's break out of the loop. Or I don't think like this.
I see. So it's you're not really in the equation. What's in the equation is what you're doing.
Yeah, if it gets in the way of the plan, then it will be handled. Whatever that might be. If it's me, like Derek can get in the way, just like an object or another person can. Or something that's not object. How do I say? Like, not, like maybe an ideology that a whole group of people believes in and that stops me from doing it. I'm just saying, like, not something of the physical realm that still can get in the way and that needs to be removed. That's how it works.
Okay, so so what I was covering was this idea of identity and how identity change, or maybe in Derek's case,
system
updates are essentially irrational. The way I've come to see my own life is it's irrational. I'm not going to be able to make sense of it. I just have to go and not think about it. And then what I've come to see is the day afterwards, I have plenty of things to think about for it. It's full of thoughts, but the thoughts only come after I do it. So I wanted to explore that about identity, and I think we can go a little bit more freeform right now and just see what branching thoughts come from that. But really, like for me, I have one thought, which is that really is the analogy that I see, which is that my identity, my life plan is very much spreading out and growing like a shrub, where these explorations I see to do out of interest, I have no idea where they lead. I'm just going to plant them, I'm just going to do them, see how I feel about them, and then the next day, I'll wake up with 1,000 ideas about what to do next. And it's very gratifying for me for that.
I think for me it's more like a video game with achievements. After I achieve a certain goal, I can move on to the next one. I'm talking about lifetime goals. Those are subject to change. They're tentative always. Like when I was a kid, I probably wanted to be something, that I've decided now at this age that I wouldn't want to be. So obviously the goals change. But, I mark off the achievement, I feel good about it in the moment, and then I move on to the next one. You mentioned expansion. For me, it's not so much expansion. It is actually quite the opposite. It's taking a bunch of things and making them lesser, or fewer, rather. Like I said, goals, or, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing, as you know, we like to create systems and they should be self-maintaining systems, ideally. So for me, it's like, if I just look at it this way. I want to start a bunch of different companies, right? Eventually, I want to have a bunch of companies, and I'm not just saying like randomly, like things that I'm interested in. I'll mention them in separate episodes. And I'd like to have a company for each, and I'd like to run them myself until they can run themselves. And that is a sense of accomplishment. So that is in and of itself, it is an expansion, but it's also, what's the opposite of expansion?
Contraction.
A contraction of the goals themselves. So it's an expansion by contraction, or contraction by expansion.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, what I hear is it has an end goal, it has an end point, and it's something that you feel like as you accomplish tasks, it'll get easier and easier. There's less and less you need to do.
Yeah, and as we spoke before, Derek's kingdom grows. So the more that I grow those things and build those things, the bigger my sort of empire grows, and that's how I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm really seeing the world, but that's also very meta, or however you put it.
Yeah.
Philosophical.
Yeah. Meta. Yeah. The other thought that I was having is, I was telling Derek earlier that this podcast has very much been a practice in me exercising exactly what I said here, which is there's a TISI way I see the world, and then NE is like these things I want to try. And even during this current podcast right now, as I'm doing them, I'm not sure if I'm right. but the beauty is that any is me saying, that's fine. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to let it sit there. And what I used to do in my past, by the way, is I would retreat back to TISI. That happened very often where I would say, I want to do this, and then I try it for like 5 seconds, and then I would say, oh, never mind, I take it back. But what I've learned is the antidote to that for me is, I don't know if this is going to work. And I'm completely open to you that I don't know if it's going to work. Here, I tried it. We'll see how I feel about it tomorrow. And it is a confidence through complete uncertainty, complete embrace of uncertainty.
Again, completely opposite to me. The more certain things are, the more at ease I am. I guess I can ease up my grip, my TE grip.
Ease.
Also, FI comes into play. If I feel satisfied internally, or I don't know if the word satisfaction is correct, but if I feel things are going the way that if they're going according to plan, according to Keikaku, then yeah, I am satisfied.
And would you said ease? Would you say that is often the emotion you are seeking as you do, for example, TE?
Yeah.
Like
if ease is an emotion, I don't know what it is, but the only thing I can think of is did you mention grip? I was picturing a grip on things. So that control, having full control over something is very important to me. When I have it, I feel like I can get things, like I know I can get things done. It's the moment that I don't have control over every aspect of something that I need to, then it breaks down, or I feel like I needed to tighten the grip. That's not to say that I have to control everything. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say I have a company and it starts running on its own. Like, I will honestly just stop in once a month or something, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to be in there micromanaging everyone. In fact, that's not I would hate that. I would not do it. I would hire someone else to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The control matters when the plan's being executed, because that is how I can guarantee the plan will be executed correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I will, of course, delegate tasks to people, delegate responsibilities, but that will be difficult. That's where maturity does come into play here for an INTJ. At least that's my observation, or my, I guess just a hypothesis or a theory, I suppose. I don't know. It's just what I feel in my brain. Those INTJs are able to let loose of that grip earlier, let's say, or they know when to do it maybe better. Again, this is something that will just happen. That's why I'm having trouble describing it. I'm just really trying hard to reflect, which I'm not good at times where that or progress I've made in that sense, so to speak.
Yeah. Hold on.
I can't tell sometimes if I'm speaking in a way that humans can understand, or if it makes sense to me.
Yeah. That's what I got from what I heard. What I heard you say was where this is the part that I found really interesting, which is it almost feels as if the image of you, the archetype of you is. It almost feels like things are automatically kind of feeling like they're gonna go out of control, and so the way you think is to how to bring it back in control. So it's almost like you're balancing like a stick on your hand, and it's always like, is everything in balance and is everything under control?
I'm not a big fan of that analogy. That sounds absolutely chaotic. The balancing thing. I'd say it's more of knowing ahead of time what's going to happen and taking control before loss of control occurs. And that's a gift. I like to think of it as a gift for people who have the ability to envision things that haven't happened. I mean, obviously it's not true. I'm not really seeing the future. I'm just predicting it through patterns and repetition and probably a whole bunch of other stuff and a little bit of chemical magic in my brain. But because of that, or thanks to that, however you want to look at it, I'm able to see ahead and realize, here's a flaw before it even happens, and then I can readjust. Or at least that's the hope.
Yeah.
It's not always possible. Again, it depends on what's going on. There's a lot of variables.
Okay, that actually helps me understand you a lot, I think, where I can see what you're doing, which is you're always looking to the future to gain control over it.
Yeah, I don't want to control the future. I just, I have the idea, I have the vision, I have the plan, I've made the plan, I've gone through the tedious work of drawing the plan up, so to speak, and now it's time to get it done, and anything that gets in the way of that is unacceptable, and I don't know how else to describe that. So I have to do everything in my power, whether it's mentally or physically, to stop or to make sure that the plan is executed.
I see.
And I'm trying very hard not to use specifics because I really want this to be, well, efficient, number one, so that it covers everything, but also, I was hoping I'm giving a level of clarity here, but I feel like I'm not.
Oh, you are.
Okay.
This is awesome.
Great.
Is awesome. And part of that, like part of you not wanting to do something again, is somewhat connected to this.
Yes. You mean like if I say something and I have to repeat it 3 times and I get angry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I usually feel like I've said it the best way possible, and it's not. And here's the cool thing: I'm not angry at the other person. I'm angry at myself. So that's the FI speaking. That's why So I have to very quickly on my toes, also SE, figure out what I did wrong and how I should have communicated that sentence better, such that the person listening actually understood me. While it might be the fault of the listener or 50-50, I don't know the percentage, it's still viewed that way internally. Again, automatically. I'm not sitting down and thinking, oh, I blah, blah, blah. The frustration occurs because it should have been right the first time.
Yeah.
When someone doesn't hear me properly, it's interpreted as I said it wrong.
I see.
Yeah.
I want to quickly look in myself and see if I can do the same thing as you. The way I hear your general way of going through life is you want to go into the future and prepare for it and get control of it.
I don't go into the future and prepare for it. I prepare for it in my mind, and then on a computer or paper or however the plan works. And sometimes I can just execute from my mind. In fact, that's more efficient for me, but it's less efficient if other people are involved. So if the plan needs to be explained to others, then I need to make a physical copy of it. Again, I'm just really trying to be a little bit abstract here so that I don't have to give specifics, because I don't want the person listening to start focusing on the what and more the, it's not the how, it's not the why. The why? Interesting. So yeah, anyway, the control itself or the reaching into the future, it's not that. It's just I know that the future is what's not here yet, and that is what I'm seeing. I don't think about it as the future. That's why this is hard for me to even articulate, because it's confusing.
I see.
That's not how the thought process works.
I see. Looking at myself, I see...
Wait, how about you?
Yeah. Well,
that's what I was meant to have said.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. Looking at myself, I see almost like the world is like enclosing on me at all times, and I want to go another way so that I can go around the world. That's generally how I feel. Like, oh, someone said, oh, this is possible, this is not possible, and I say, oh, really? And then I want to check the cracks, and I want to make sure that what they just said is true. And that's how I view everything. I'm just constantly exploring all cracks.
What is so frightening about someone just giving you an answer? Like, why, I'm just going to say it my way, why can't you accept the answer given as truth?
The first thing I'll say is I don't think this is conscious at all. I immediately view all things said to me as like, oh, okay, that's what that person says. Not that's what is true. I say that's what that person says. And
or rather, you mean that's what that person believes to be true?
It says. Just says.
The words out of the person's mouth.
Yeah. Because they might not even believe it. They might just say it so that they want you to stop looking. Sometimes people do that.
But you're not consciously thinking this way. You're not being suspicious of them. You're just saying, you just by default don't believe.
I by default don't believe. I wrote something about this before. That's why I'm so fascinated by psychology and philosophy, because I feel those are ways that I can understand everything without having to rely on anyone. That's how I want my knowledge. I want my knowledge to stand alone. I want my knowledge to just be there. It's in a book, instead of me having to ask someone and then they tell me and then I say, okay, I trust you. I don't want that. I want everything to link together logically, and everything makes sense, and it's just there, not involving people.
Do you see how that could be viewed as controlling?
Could you say more?
No. You literally just said, I'd rather do it myself. I'd rather know everything myself. I'd rather attain the knowledge myself, make my own map for myself. I heard a lot of self in there, which is you controlling truth or controlling what is in your world. Do you understand what I mean by is? And anything outside of that is, well, it's nice that you took the time to do your own research. Let's say you're talking INTP to INTP. They were like, no, dude, I already made a map. Here it is. No, well, that's very pretty, but I'm going to make my own now.
Yeah.
That sounds controlling. I just wanted to point that out because it's not just the INTJs or certain types. Like, we all might have certain things that people just haven't really noticed, and so I'm wondering if I'm noticing something you've noticed or haven't noticed.
I imagine that to TE types, I actually look I look stubborn, I look arrogant, because I want a lot of control over knowledge. Yeah, I've seen in Korea that a lot of times I ask questions about things that I shouldn't ask about in a very TE or oriented organization, because I want to know everything, and I don't trust people, and I personally think TE has a lot to do with trust, because, well, I mean, I almost think TE is built on trust, because when you have a trustworthy source, then that is how you can be efficient.
Right, but for an INTJ, that trustworthy source is the NI, whereas with an ISTJ using T, that trust comes from historical data.
Uh-huh.
So the source of trust is also different. I'm trusting in something that doesn't exist. It's just, I'm trusting myself to know what will happen. And the great thing is I'm the one who's also making it happen. I have control, so I technically, at least in my mind, have more control, or I can trust myself more than someone else, and that's probably why INTJs don't trust other people, because I find it very fascinating you use the word trust, and yet I'm probably the least trustful. That's not right. The person who trusts others the least out of both of us, and probably out of anyone in this building.
Mm-hmm.
I trust no one. I only trust what I have control over, and blindly. I will trust reputable sources, etc., but I must have information. But I still don't fully trust that information and the source of said information. So there's always going to be a level of suspiciousness in me. And that is why I find, and we were talking earlier about investigating, that's why I will investigate sources. I'll investigate people before I even give them a chance to try to ask me to trust them. Again, I'm looking a few steps ahead. So if I feel like, there's a room full of 10 people, 9 of them are just doing whatever, and one of them I know I will interact with in the future for some reason or another, I will start vetting that person immediately.
Mm-hmm.
This is very off topic, but I feel like it connects.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we're talking about trust, I suppose.
Well, yeah. What I was thinking was, once we get through the actual message of the podcast, then we can move into some free-form talk.
Yeah.
But I guess I will first summarize, and then I will ask if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, and then we can.
Sure.
So today's message that I wanted to get across, I prepared was about identity, which is turning out to be a very INTP only idea, which is what I've seen in my own life is, when things make sense, it's because I've done it before and I've thought about it before, which means that there are many things that I can't make sense of, new things, like a podcast. And what I've come to see is, in order to do stuff like this, I have to let go of it making any sense. I just do it, and there is this voice inside me saying, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. That voice is just my past self trying to make sense of something new. And what I've come to see is when I do something new, I cannot think about it. I just have to do it and not know. And what we've seen for Derek is that he doesn't do that. He does the INTJ thing of preparing for the future and executing on that. So that is the message I wanted to get out today, and now we can talk about anything.
Yeah, I mean, I might as well talk to the summation there, because it would be, I would imagine someone would ask the question, then why is Derek there? You've mentioned that it's exploratory, and so you're just doing it, you're Nikeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm supposedly seeing ahead of and having a plan and executing something, then I wouldn't be here if I weren't executing something. And I wanted to actually leave that as an open-ended question for someone who's watching the podcast in succession and in order. Otherwise, this will not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we think, myself, you, and the others, I'm here? I'm not going to answer it today. I'll answer it next time. Maybe I won't. Mystery. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say in regards to what we talked about today. I think that... But you mentioned that only INTPs do that. What was it? Exploration? Or no. You talked about identity. I think just between the two of us.
Yes, that's true.
Right,
That's
but
true.
you said it as if it's like there are no other personality types that would be open to this idea. So I would disagree. We just need to figure out who would fit that sort of description. And it could just be that I'm not fully grasping what identity really means, so that could be the case as well. But I feel like we hit the nail on the head today, and we showed you how we perceive the same thing. And sometimes we see it completely different, or we won't see it at all. I'm sure there are things that I see that you will just be like, huh? Maybe not. So that's the exploration I feel like we're on, and that is the message is overall for the podcast too, I think, somewhat, is that we are here to do the exploring for, I keep saying you, for you, so that, and for the listeners, I guess if there's somebody not watching or can't watch, is that we're doing new things, and we're eventually gonna get somewhere new, and that's what I partially see. So I'll give you a partial answer. I see something coming from this, but I also know that trial and error and practice makes perfect. That type of thing is also a thing. So I figure, why not record while doing it? We could just sit in a room together, practicing and never upload it. But I like showing the process, because that's the thing that you don't get to see with INTJs, at least, usually. The thoughts that I'm sharing with you and the processes that I use to get to where I'm going, no one gets to see that. It's in my head, actually, most of it. So, free POV, point of view, insight into me brain. Yep, that's all I have to say about that.
Cool. My first thought about who might have identity, perhaps it is the SI types, perhaps, but that's just my running theory right now. With that, okay, so we've talked about identity from both of our perspectives, and I think there's nothing else that I'd like to talk about. So
not on this topic.
All right, so we'll wrap it up for this episode, and we'll talk to you the next time.
Bye.